This one always goes. Hello everybody, welcome, happy Wednesday. This is PTZOptics and HuddleCam HD Live. I'm your host, Tess Protesto, and we're live every Wednesday now. This is our second week back from the new year and back with our new live streaming schedule. Today we are going to be talking to our educators. First of all, big thank you to anybody in our audience who is an educator during this time. We know things are quite challenging, and we thought, why not, especially with the increase of remote learning right now, dive into some tips from our education clients that we feel might be helpful for you when you are exploring hybrid learning options. So today we're going to talk about 4 specific tips for a higher education hybrid learning experience. I did mention we are live now weekly. We want to make sure that we're spending as much time as possible as we can with you guys, building our community and educating you guys with some helpful tools for live streaming and video communications. Finally, we have an upcoming event. Our annual Worship Summit Live is this February 11th. For those of you, I know we're talking about education today, but for those of you who are interested in worship streaming, you're definitely going to want to attend that free virtual event. You can get tickets at worshipsummit.live. Hope to see you there. All right, we're going to kick things off today. I do have 2 wonderful guests with me, co-hosts, if you will. In studio, I have with me Miss Lindsay Pope. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have you on because you have some of your own unique experiences regarding hybrid learning and the changes the past few years have brought upon that. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. And then I have my colleague, Mr. Stephen Haywood. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Tess, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. Stephen is going to help us talk about some of the technology that you might want to look into to elevate your hybrid or remote learning scenario. So, we're going to dive into things first initially with a little bit of a story time. I wanted to pose the question to the audience, those of you who are educators, how have you established, experienced, or created a remote learning experience for your classroom, for your school, for your children even? What have been the solutions that you have discovered? Please let us know in the chat because we want to be sure to share the most with everybody who is participating today. So if you have any tips that you'd like me to share with the audience, let us know in the chat and we can share them on the screen. How are you using remote learning? Are you? Or a mix of both? We're going to be talking about that today. Lindsay, can we start with you?
Sure.
So when the pandemic came about, you were in college. What grade?
I was a senior in college, so it was my last semester, and we were the classic, the long spring break. We all thought that we were just getting an extra 2 weeks of spring break, and then we never went back. So
When you say never went back, so the university said, okay, we need 2 breaks. Let's put the pause on school in general while we figure out what we're going to do. I wonder if other schools did the same thing, at least universities perhaps. When you say we didn't go back, do you mean did you do all online? Did you do hybrid or just no school?
Yeah, it was all online. We switched to all online. Everything went on Zoom, and everything was on our online portal, where we were already taking quizzes and tests that way. So it was sort of an easy transition, but also with everything being so new and hectic, there were some challenges, obviously.
And what was the online portal that you used?
We used D2L.
Okay, we're definitely going to be talking about some learning management systems today, and D2L is a good example of that. So I think for some universities, the transition, you might have had more technology at your disposal than maybe lower K through 12 schools might have for online learning, whereas your school already had some hybrid or remote learning options, so you were able to hop onto D2L and quizzes, tests.
Yeah. Quizzes, tests, assignments. We already had a lot of things online, but I mean, obviously, there were classes like for people who did labs. I don't have any experience with that because I was media and culture and communications, but for people who had labs, obviously, they couldn't go to their labs. So
Would the teachers of, say, the labs submit lectures or videos?
I think so. I think that's how they did it. I know there were a lot of pre-recorded classes. I've had pre-recorded online classes before.
So I'm sure that was not how you planned your last semester of
No,
college to go.
I was ready to, live my best senior year college life, and they said, no, you stay home. Everybody stays home. And yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your experience with us. That was a great way to kick things off today. And I already see some comments coming in on the YouTube chat that we're going to go over. I guess I might as well start the tips that I have for you guys today. Of course, we're going to be able to align some technology with these tips. It wouldn't be a PTZOptics or HuddleCam HD show if we didn't. So hopefully you find some of this helpful. Our first tip is, Michael's going to bring it up full screen for me, utilizing elements that complement in-person and digital learning environments. So today we're talking specifically about hybrid. If you're not familiar with that, that's going to be a mix of in-person and remote learning. I know a lot of schools in one way have a quarantine time if you get the disease in discussion, that you have to have an option for students who are staying home to learn, and also a space for your students that are inside the classroom. How do you do that? Well, Lindsay mentioned remote learning platforms, or learning management platforms like D2L, Blackboard, Moodle, Panopto. All of these are good ways to be able to mix and match content in the classroom as well as online, where you can post homework, lectures. Perhaps in the classroom you might have an assignment, and then online you have your recorded lectures, and so then anybody who's home can do the assignment, or in the classroom can do the assignment, and both can refer to the lectures at home. It's basically having the ability to have both options. You could also use unified communication platforms like Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams to accomplish a similar goal. Perhaps having a camera feed into your classroom for those students who are home to have a view of the classroom. PTZ cameras, perhaps. You might want to consider a camera with a built-in microphone so your students at home can hear you as well as see what's going on inside the classroom. That's it for tip number 1. Our second tip coming up next. Our second tip is going to be all about, not flexibility, all about listening to your students, okay? Because the transition is so difficult at times, I'm in control of the presentation. Silly me, I'm waiting for Michael to pull it up, and here it's under my control. Okay, being receptive to feedback from learners, listening to your students. You'll see I'm going to let you guys know exactly how we got these tips and an article affiliated with this, and I'll give you the CTA for that later on in the show. But surveys, perhaps if you have a survey at the beginning of the beginning of your hybrid learning experience, how you want, how students prefer to learn, whether it's to have do homework in the class and lectures online or vice versa. If you were to offer student surveys to see exactly what they're comfortable with and how they want to learn during these difficult times, or even weekly or monthly town halls for all of your different classes or all of your different students. Educate yourself as well. There's tons of online resources, kind of like what we're doing today, that supply you with some ideas of how you can accomplish a successful hybrid learning experience. Another thing that I would consider would be to have a monitor where you can actually see the faces of the students that are on the other end of your remote classrooms. So you can see their responses, so you can see whether they're engaged in the content, so you can see whether they're showing up even, because I know that's a thing, surely with remote learning. And maybe even a speakerphone. So not only can students hear the content that you're talking about, we talked about a PTZ camera with a built-in microphone in the last tip. Maybe you want to consider a speakerphone so your students can actually audibly ask you questions and participate with the students that are in the classroom as well. Tip number 3. We're going to get through these pretty quick so we can chat with the audience. Flexibility is key. It's difficult. We know it's difficult for educators. I commend them largely. This year has been extremely difficult. The past 2 years, I mean, I have a student in elementary school, and I can just see the challenges that have been brought towards them. And I commend all the educators out there for looking into these alternative ways to teach and to give their students the best learning scenario that they possibly can. So understandably, a certain amount of flexibility is necessary, whether it's being flexible with perhaps due dates and other assignments, or flexible in the way that your specific students are learning. No students are the same, so maybe adding on a virtual office hours option is something that we have definitely seen, where you can get on Zoom together and talk about your day-to-day needs or anything that students might be falling behind in. Last tip for you, make the most of available technology. I peppered in a few cool pieces of technology like a PTZ camera with a built-in audio source, a speakerphone, and finally we're going to talk about some higher level pieces of technology like broadcast, live streaming, PTZ cameras, beyond just USB plug and play. It is great to start with USB because it's easy to understand. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew as an educator getting into remote learning from the technology standpoint. But if you're a higher education place like university, you might be a little bit more adept and prepared to implement a higher level piece of technology. So take a look at recording options, maybe live education options like the D2L, Panopto, and even just Zoom communication for teaching as well, and as well as recording options, and even auto tracking. If you don't have the time or energy to control a camera or worry about a camera, you just want to walk in a classroom and have a camera just follow you and do its job. An auto tracking camera is a great option for that. And that's where I'm going to invite you in, Stephen, because I think you're going to give us a little demonstration.
Yeah, I'm going to get up here and switch over to the auto tracker that we have, the Simple Track 2. And as you guys can see, it's following me pretty seamlessly. And the question, obviously, as Tess was presenting there, we're in this pandemic. What about if you were wearing a mask? Will the camera still track you? So I'm going to put on the old trusty mask here. And we're going to have it follow me. And you're going to see that even though I'm wearing the mask, it's still following my every movement. I'm going to take this off so you guys don't have to listen to my microphone being ruffled. But the other thing that also comes up a lot of times is the background. So I have some different backgrounds here that I keep on the TV. And you can see there's a lot of motion in this studio here. And the camera is still tracking me. It's not losing its track. It's not jumping off. It's still able to follow me. Another question that comes up is, how hard is it to set something like this up? And that's where we're going to take a look here in just a few seconds at the software that we have for the Simple Track here. I just have to log into the machine and we can get into it. But Tess, I mean, overall, it's very, very simple to get this going.
Yeah, and I like what you brought up about having to wear a mask, because that's very challenging, especially when you're looking at auto tracking cameras that so often use facial features for tracking. So that's something that I didn't even realize about. The Simple Track 2 is actually the camera that we're talking about. I'm not sure if I actually mentioned that by HuddleCam HD. That's the camera we're talking about for auto tracking. And there's a software that comes with it. Stephen, I wondered if you could just do a quick screen share for anybody that's interested and just do a brief overview of what that looks like.
Absolutely.
So you can see here, this is the software that's that you get. And so how hard is this to set up? Well, basically, you open the software, you hit Start Scan, and it automatically finds this camera on my network. This is an NDI capable camera. And since I've already added it up here, you would simply double click it, then open the multi-view, and you can see there's the camera. So right now I have it on tracking, or I can stop the tracking. You're going to see it pull out. And it's as simple as setting some presets, right? So preset 1, I'm going to call that up. That's going to be like my tight shot. So if you're an educator, this is where maybe you're working on your whiteboard and you want to have students pay attention to what you're doing there. And that's the kind of framing you want. Right. Preset 0 is going to be test your wide shot, right? That's going to be, these two are the most important features or presets to set for this camera. So when you start tracking, it stays within that range. There's also a tracking area, as you can see here by this green box that's set up. That basically says to the camera, I only want you to track whatever or whoever is in this field of view inside this green box. You can also set up blocking zones. So let's say you have students in the front row. You could essentially draw a red box here and say, do not track in this area if something changes. Keep it to just that. So you can set up multiple blocking zones. There's macro capabilities. There's a tracking speed, pan speed. You can go through all of this and set it. But honestly, it's just as easy as just pressing a button and finding it on your network, especially with the NDI capabilities.
Yeah, and for some of the schools that might actually be looking at camera systems like this, We're thinking about a lot of times like universities putting them in lecture halls, whereas you might have an IT manager set it up for you, and the teacher never even has to really think about it. They just plug their laptop in, connect to the camera, and then they can just go. So that's definitely one of the benefits of that system. Thanks for showing that off, Stephen.
Absolutely.
Are your kids in school right now, or are they remote learning?
Yeah, no, my kids are in school full time. In fact, here in Ohio, we don't even have any mandates, so to speak. It's strongly advised. My kids, obviously, they're smart when it comes to being around friends that are coughing or something. They wear their mask, but if they're kind of in an area where there's a lot of people, they'll put their masks on, but it's not mandatory or required as of right now. So
Okay. Yeah, our district, my son's district, is still in person. They do have a policy, a quarantining policy, where you can remote learn during that time that you obviously can't be in school while you're sick. So that there is a remote learning option as well. But it's interesting because of the big spike that's happening. We are seeing some schools where they had ditched the remote learning policy, revert back to that. So that's why we thought it would be really timely to dive into this topic today.
absolutely, and the technology is there, so it's not as difficult as it was years ago, right?
Yeah, and over the past 2 years, especially with our HuddleCam products, we've just seen a big need for those type of video communication tools, of course, in the education space. Whether it's a teacher at home just using a webcam, or like a webcam and speakerphone combination, or full-on auto tracking system that schools want to implement. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. I want to bring up a few comments and let you guys know what some other educators in the audience are doing. I have Stephen here saying, I use Zoom for communications. Exams and quizzes are given via Canvas. I use publisher-based homework systems. We deliver labs by pre-recorded video. Well, that answers a question I had earlier when I was discussing with Lindsay. So some classes need those demonstrations. They need that visual aspect. And I think it's great that you're using those tools, Stephen. You're also using OBS virtual camera to feed different feeds into Zoom. So you have quite an advanced system. So you have some knowledge if you're using OBS into Zoom. And that's impressive. Please let me know how you learned about that type of technology to implement.
I have a couple on Facebook too.
Oh, you got some Facebook ones?
Yeah.
All right, what do you got?
Kyle says, my co-coach for esports just got Microsoft Minecraft Education certified. He has not used it yet in classroom, but it could definitely aid in the remote teaching.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yeah. Never heard of that.
So Minecraft is that. I knew that in STEM classes, we did some content regarding this where you could challenge your students to all build the same thing and stuff like that and have your own custom servers. But it seems to be pretty detailed. Have you heard of that, Stephen? Like Minecraft in education?
Yeah, my kids have talked about it. It doesn't surprise me because my 13-year-old she builds her own Minecraft server, and that's one game I have no idea about anything with.
I'm surprised from you.
It never appealed to me, but they play it, my son and my daughter, so it's out there.
Yeah, and when we're seeing esports in education just becoming one as a way for, educators to relate to their students and try and support something they're interested in a fun and educational way, we're going to continue seeing certifications and opportunities like what Kyle's referring to. Mike So uses OBS and NDI hybrid with Zoom. And Stephen answered my question about how did you come up with all this great knowledge? And he said from YouTube channels like ours. That's great.
Woo.
I hope that you find some of this helpful. It probably seems pretty basic, some of it, but for somebody who's really just starting and maybe taking the lead for their school or school district on what do we do, hopefully this type of content will be helpful for them.
Ooh, Kyle said they have lesson plans around physics and other content areas, not used as a game, but a collaborative area.
A collaborative area.
Interesting.
Wow, that is wild.
I only know of Minecraft being the game that you break things down and you just build things. You
And
go
build
and you look
things.
for tools and stuff to build them. But that's my only knowledge.
It's a great way to like reach children because of their strong interest in it. Okay. Ken is saying I use 3 HuddleCam NDI cameras for indoor sports. That's another consideration. Not only are we talking about in the classroom, what about theater and school sports and other activities that can no longer have in-person attendance? Do you have a system in place for that? Stephen, I know you can speak to this topic. What have schools in your area been doing for that?
Yeah, so I know with the play last year, we recorded a lot of the theater. We were brought in, and we also did graduation. And as the pandemic was seeming to wind down, we thought, well, are they going to still want to stream this stuff? And we were notified, a buddy of mine, and that they still want to go further through the future and streaming these events and recording them because the parents really liked it and they want to use it as a fundraiser for these different departments to either better the equipment, better the I guess the overhead for the theater department, get costumes and different things like that. So I think the pandemic did cause some good in some sense because it opened a door for people to accept this remote workflow or this hybrid workflow and realize it made people realize like, wow, we can have these memories on digital and not just be there in person, and we can enjoy it if we are there in person because somebody else is recording it.
I'm sure the sporting scouts are loving it. They don't even have to travel anymore. And students who are looking to get scholarships, that's a huge opportunity for them to be online and visible.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see more and more this is taking over and having the ability, like you were saying, with multiple cameras, you're getting shots and you're getting angles of some of these players that you're just not going to get by sitting in the stands. You're going to see, when that guy's he's tight roping down the sideline, and you're trying to decide if this guy's a good, running back or whatever. You get to see it from all different angles that, as a scout, that's what you want to see.
Here, DCT is commenting about their AV education, and they say, I was in the process of repurposing my in-person material for hybrid before the disease, but now I'm repurposing to suit either full remote or hybrid. DCT, aka Peter. Hi, Peter. The virus, should I say. So you were thinking about converting to hybrid before all this started, and now you're repurposing for full remote or hybrid. So you're seeing some opportunities just for online education, not just in the schools, but for anybody who does this kind of, like what we're doing right now. We've been okay because we're used to doing things remotely. We benefit from that for sure. But it's just really interesting to see this transition happening. And it seems kind of like Stephen said, it was already there, but now there's this opportunity for people to really kind of embrace the hybrid or virtual opportunities that are out there. I've got a couple more questions here. Do you have anything else on Facebook that you want to list for me, Lindsay? Stephen also got into remote teaching earlier than most, so you have some experience there. Daryl is mentioning senior centers, tech center Zoom sessions, one-on-one chat room sessions to solve individual tech computer problems. Fun fact, I used to volunteer at a senior center doing that. I would just go in and I would show them how to use their iPhone or something. So that's a real serious need.
Cute.
And I love that you were able to do that virtually.
Ken is saying that I use 4 PTZOptics cameras for town hall meetings too.
For town hall meetings. There's a lot of things beyond education right now, of course, that are going virtual, and town hall meetings is definitely a big one, just to keep people safe. I could keep taking some questions or we can wrap this up. I know we're supposed to keep our shows a little bit shorter, so I might go ahead and close things up for today because we're going live weekly. We're going to do a longer, larger show the last Wednesday of the month, and there will be a giveaway associated with that. So if you haven't registered for the last Wednesday of the month's giveaway, we're going to be spinning the wheel for one lucky winner. You can enter at PTZOptics.com/show. You can also register for our live show notification list there. If you're watching this today and you have liked this content, don't forget to like and subscribe and all the options that are out there on the platforms you're watching. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephen, Michael, and Lindsay, for helping me produce this show today.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great show.
Thank you.
You still there, Stephen? There you are.
Yep, I'm still here.
All right, guys. Thank you so. Oh, we got one last question. Should I keep? I can't help myself. I'll just answer this really
Keep it going.
quick.
Keep it rolling.
Mike, we are not using OBS today. We're using vmix. So there you go. It's vmix social. If you're wondering how to get the social, how we're getting the social into today's stream. Pretty cool feature. All right, that's it. I'm done now. We'll see you next Wednesday, guys.